Many 49er fans have been wondering, will Brandon Aiyuk show up to organize team activities today in Santa Clara? And from Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network, Brandon Aiyuk is not expected to be at OTAs today. I can also confirm that Brandon Aiyuk will not be at OTAs today after speaking to someone close to the situation. He's training, he's working out in Southern California right now. He's putting in a ton of work. It just won't be during the organized team activities, which aren't mandatory, I might add. And also would like to continue to add that this is par for the course. This is actually expected. I did not expect Brandon Aiyuk to show up for OTAs. Now, the next hurdle will be mandatory minicamp because it's mandatory. And then we'll have our first, like, oh, is he going to show up? Is he really not going to show up? And we'll see what the determinations of that situation turn out to be. I don't personally expect Brandon Aiyuk to be there for mandatory minicamp. I don't expect Brandon Aiyuk to show up to the 49ers facility until a contract is done. And I've already seen the comments start to pile up about, oh, Brandon Aiyuk's being a diva. He doesn't want to win a Super Bowl and a championship. And just none of those things are true. I think it's really important for fans who are ultra concerned with the 49ers winning and winning on Sundays, as you should be, to be able to disconnect, to be able to discern that this is just how business is operating in the NFL at this current time. Look at the Tampa Bay Bucks, for example. Tristan Wirfs, he's not at OTAs because he's looking for a new contract. This is just standard operating procedure. No Justin Jefferson with the Vikings. This is just how it works. So these guys aren't going to go out and put themselves at risk of injury in these types of scenarios while they're negotiating a contract. So, that being said, Mike Garafolo went on to discuss more about the contract and everything that's been going on with the negotiations. And this is what Garafolo had to say on NFL Network about Brandon Aiyuk.
For some other wide receivers who would like to get paid, including one out there in San Francisco.
Well, we know about Brandon Aiyuk and his situation with the San Francisco 49ers because it's been a topic of discussion and was around the draft. Would the Niners trade Brandon Aiyuk? And the teams that checked in on it got the sense that no, they weren't interested in doing it. That's what they said as well. So now it's back to the table to try to get a contract extension done. And it doesn't seem like they're any closer at this point, Tom, than they have been over the last couple of weeks and months here. So don't expect to see Aiyuk around for anything that's voluntary. And let's see about the mandatory stuff as well with him, because you know he wants this done. He doesn't want to have to play on the last year of his contract. And if the 49ers at some point realize, well, we can't get this thing done, does he push their hand and say, well, look, either it's a contract or get me out of here? We're not there. There hasn't been a trade request. I know that there were rumblings and reports about it. We're just not there at this point. It's just a matter of figuring out what his value is, because he's looking out and he's seeing the deal that Amon-Ra St. Brown got done, and the 49ers may turn around and say, well, your production is not the same as his, and he could say, well, my target share is not the same. Between Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Deebo Samuel, the ball's got to go elsewhere in this offense. So if I had the number of targets that he had or some of these other guys had, my production would be up there with them as well. And the Niners, on the other hand, are saying, well, we've got to pay all these other people. How can we possibly pay you at the top of the market as well? So that's the dance that's kind of going on right now. But every sense that I've gotten from speaking to folks familiar with the progress of talks is that, Tom, they are not close at this point.
So we actually talked about this topic yesterday because the Jeremy Fowler report from ESPN essentially said the same exact thing. They're not close, far away, all these different types of things. And I tried to express optimism about this situation because based on the standard operating procedures for the San Francisco 49ers, from an outside perspective looking in, the 49ers aren't cutting deals in May. It's just not how we've seen them work. It's not how their process operates. What we see are the 49ers cut deals for their superstars around July, August, when it's training camp time. So these reports that are, oh, they're far off, this, that, and the other thing, I don't know if they're being put out there for a particular reason. But my interpretation of this is par for the course. I would not expect them to be very close to ultimately getting things done in May, because that just hasn't been the typical procedure for the 49ers. Now, I could imagine that Brandon Aiyuk would want this thing taken care of sooner rather than later, but we just have to be patient and we just have to let this thing play out, which will likely turn into Brandon Aiyuk getting everything that he ultimately wanted just at the end of July. That's the game that you got to play. I think as a 49er fan, you are fully aware of this game that is being played. So I think it's important to just like chill on the diva stuff. Oh, he doesn't want to be a part of the Niners. He doesn't want to win a championship. No, that's not true. He wants to be a 49er. He wants to be here long term. He just wants to be compensated for what he's done and his immense skill set, as all and every NFL player wants to do. What he is doing is no different from players that we've seen before. Look at Nick Bosa, look at Debo, Kittle. I think actually Kittle showed up, I believe, for OTAs. I think that was a little bit of a different scenario. But again, this is pretty standard. This is standard operating procedure, not only for the 49ers, but for the NFL. So the way that I'm continuing to operate and I'm continuing to perceive this situation is, if we're hearing reports that they aren't close at the end of July, I think that's where we start to be a little bit more concerned. But hearing this at the end of May, not a concern, and honestly to be expected. So as we continue to move forward, we know what the kind of invisible deadline date is. And as we continue to inch closer to that, is when we will start to kind of perk up a little bit more for these reports. Until then, I don't hear any new information. I just kind of hear the same things being talked about. And I would imagine we will hear this type of conversation all the way throughout the month of June. And then we'll get the reports in July. The 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk are getting closer. Not there yet, but they're getting closer. And then, boom, all of a sudden, we're going to get the deal. Brandon Ayuk's going to get that Amon-Ra St. Brown money, and we're going to go into training camp, and we're going to forget this thing ever happened. So it is what it is. It's becoming off-season normalcy for all of us as 49er fans, but it kind of is what it is situation. Until it's done, we'll continue to cover it as it comes through. But that's the update. Brandon Aiyuk not expected to be at OTAs. He won't be, and he shouldn't be. It's basically to be expected at this point. So not a concern. And from here on out, we'll see if he'll be at mandatory minicamp, and then we'll continue to move throughout. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.